Awesome. Yeah, my name is Cindy. I am currently on the State Board of Directors of the Region 1 rep. Have another year left of my term for that, and I'm the Community Services Manager for the City of Roanoke Park. I wanted to join this committee because I'm one of the people in our association that have not followed legislation because it didn't make sense to me, and so what didn't make sense, I just let other people deal with. And so hopefully, as part of our reboot, we can really help people understand who don't understand how this works and how it can benefit us and where we've been and where we're headed. So that is me.
Perfect. And Cindy, since she's a little younger than Stephanie and I, she's helping, and maybe John, she is helping us to sort of reconfigure this so that we make more sense to a broader audience and not just, you know, those of us that have been around a few years. You all know Stephanie. You all know Stephanie, of course. And then last but not least, and probably the one who keeps us the most sane as far as figuring all this stuff out, is Doug Houston. And Doug, I'll give you your 2 seconds here. You're muted. Doug, we can't hear you. There you go.
About now.
Yeah, got it.
Good. Hi, everybody. Doug Houston. My firm is represented in California Park and Recreation Society, among other folks, for, oh boy, I think dates back to late 80s, early 90s. Been doing work on behalf of Parks, Recreation, Open Space Community, and was a principal on a number of important pieces of legislation that benefited all of your agents, including Props 1240 and more recently 68. And hope to do whatever I can to be helpful and to guide you all through this this process. It's exciting.
Thank you very much. So the rest of the team is those of you that are sitting on the call, as well as those who were not able to be here today. So we kind of did this reboot because we wanted more participation. We wanted to give the district and section representatives a little bit more opportunity to weigh in. It's one of the things that over the years, the job has been a little bit nebulous. There hasn't been a real strong structure to it. And so that's why we want you to be a part of this. We want to give you some responsibility with it. And at the same time, we want to be able to help educate you so that you can also help carry that message of advocacy. We are asking that you be engaged, that you ask questions. I started with the former legislative committee in 2000. So I've been doing this for quite a while, but I often have to go to Doug and say, what does this mean? How does this work? Explain it to me, because legislation and advocacy is a really, really big thing, and we will try our best to break it down enough so that you understand it as we go along. But we also ask you, please ask questions. Please let us know if you're confused, if you don't understand something. You can ask us on the calls that we'll have monthly, or you can ask us privately through email or phone. Any of us are happy to respond and answer questions, and if we don't know the answer, we know who to ask generally. So we really, really encourage you to get involved and to kind of get really connected with this. We want to share your perspectives. There are lots of different parts of this that you will learn over the next year, and so we want you to be able to really get a good understanding of the different pieces and volunteer. You know, if we during election season, we will ask for some folks to help us with the candidate endorsements. We encourage you to volunteer. We'll get a small group together, and you'll have a chance to see kind of the inner workings of some of the things we've been doing. And then just enjoy yourselves. Again, John and Oscar said it. We like to try to make things fun and interesting. legislation can be pretty dry. So we want you to be comfortable with having a little fun with it. We ask you to feel free to join any of the kind of subcommittees that we may have. We ask you to be willing to step up, and even if you don't understand it all, that's okay. Volunteer and let us know what you're interested in doing. This is an ongoing process. It's kind of a work in progress because we're trying to change things up and make things more interesting to our members. So any ideas you have, we're happy to hear. We also will be asking you to share perhaps your knowledge and expertise of, especially when it comes to the sections, the aging section, the aquatic section. We want to know what's going on in your particular field. Sometimes we don't always see all of the legislation that's out there. And if you see something or hear something, we want to know about it. So share what you know so that we can stay informed as well. Are we going to do questions now, Stephanie, or do you want to wait till?
We can pause.
There are a couple chat people too. Did you see those?
Yeah, I've been answering those.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
So any questions before we go on? Nope. Okay. My turn still. Legislation. So there's 4 different areas that we're really looking at for the advocacy program. Beginning with legislation, obviously that's the one of the biggest focuses because that's really where we need to be on top of what's going on in Sacramento. We have moved over the almost 20 years I've been doing this from reacting to legislation to proposing and sponsoring legislation. We have been able to get more involved with the legislators. Doug has been able to get us at the table for many pieces of legislation, so we've been able to affect things that might have been negative or things that we really think would be good for our profession. So we really need you to do a couple of things here. First of all, you will get a watch list, which is a list of the legislation we're currently watching for in the session, the current session. And we will ask you to look through that, read it, and familiarize yourself with it prior to the meeting. So you get a little bit of homework. The legislation generally lasts the entire session. I mean, once it's introduced, we kind of follow the same things for the most part. Things get introduced here and there in between or change, but for the most part, you're going to, once you've had a chance to look at it and familiarize yourself with the watch list, you will be able to understand it from month to month. But we really do ask you to please read through the agenda, read through the watch list. And you will help us determine what our position is going to be. Whether we watch a piece of legislation because we're not sure how it's going to affect us or if it will. Whether we support something because we think it's going to be positive and productive for us as a profession. Or if we oppose something when we've had some legislation that seems to be a detriment to us. I know that the D&O section has been very instrumental in giving us information and feedback so that we can change things from oppose to support, but by making sure it doesn't hamper the job that they do. And you will serve kind of as that link between us and the district and sections and the membership that you work with out in the real world. So we want you to be that link between us and them and from them back to us. If there's anything that somebody needs information about or is confused about, certainly bring it to the team, and we will try to get information back to any of your members who have issues or concerns or questions or whatever. And then the second piece is education. As many of you probably have seen, Doug and I and Stephanie and John and previously Nancy Matthews are the ones that kind of funneled everything through and did the education pieces in a lot of the different regions and sections and district activities or events as well as at conference. But we want you to really start to feel comfortable with doing that as well. So when there is a district mini conference or a meeting of some kind, we encourage you to step out there to provide information and to be willing to do sessions and do educational programs when you're comfortable with that. If you need our help, if you need my help, you're welcome. I'm happy to help you. We've got slideshows that we've used in the past. You can kind of use those as starter points. So there's a lot of resources that we might have that we're happy to help you with. But we really would like you to start thinking about, when can I reach a larger audience through some kind of educational program or training or other event that's going on locally. Stephanie.
All right. So
you're on.
Yeah, committee. The next committee is telling the story. It's really about telling our story of Parks and Recreation. One of those things that, unfortunately, as a profession, I'm not sure that we're really terribly good at and that we need to get better at. So that's going to be part of our advocacy group. And we'd really like to get a couple of groups going together, one about that education piece, but one about really telling the story and collecting information so that we can tell that a much better way to all of our elected officials at that local level as well as at the state level. We do have our California Action Plan teams put together now, and they're also working on some advocate tools as well as telling the story tools and education tools. So we're going to work in concert with those folks. If telling the story is something you're really good at, then we'd like you to get more and more involved in that. The last big piece, and that gets kind of confusing at times, is that we actually have 2 political action committees, PACs. One is about candidates and candidate endorsements. Every year we put out some information to our political candidates on the state level. We ask them for some information about them, and then we really judge, is this somebody that is on our side, somebody that can really help us advance the park and recreation profession, and we do some endorsements on those folks. We also need some fundraising for that side. So that money, those monies that are raised, help Doug Houston, our advocate, to actually be part of events and functions that are happening at the state level to make sure that CPRS is at the foremost of all of those events and functions that are happening. So there's a fundraising component to that side of it. Our other PAC is an issues PAC, and that's one that comes up when we sponsor a piece of legislation or we want to get more heavily involved. Prop 68 was one of those. We activated our issues PAC, we created a fundraising strategy, and we were able to funnel money through that PAC in order to enhance the campaign. So that's one of those that just comes up when we need it. But those are pieces that we want to teach you about. We want you to get more involved in and understand a bit better so that you can help us educate and tell the story of why we need that information out there to people. So the education, telling the story, and those 2 PACs, those are subcommittees that we really want to create out of this group. If you find something that seems really interesting to you or you want to learn more about, be like Cindy and say, gosh, I don't know anything about that, so I'm going to join so that I can learn, right? We would really like to hear from you about getting more involved in that. So, A-team tools. Now, none of this is going to be up to you alone. We've got really great, strong leaders. We've got Doug with us. We've got Pilar with us to help us all guide the way. I know we're throwing a lot at you right now, but trust us, as we get moving, it's all going to come much, much more easier as we do this. We're going to have a monthly Zoom call with this core group of people. We are going to get together and look at the pieces of legislation that Doug thinks that are important for us to follow. We're going to decide if we're going to watch, support, or oppose those. We're going to have good discussions via Zoom, so we hope that you come and are engaged and ask questions and participate in those discussions. Then how we're going to engage the rest of CPRS membership is really through a monthly e-newsletter that we're putting together. We've done it a couple of times late last year. but we're just going to do a monthly newsletter letting members know, here's what we're doing, here's our watch list. And then as needed, say we get another park bond going this year, right, Doug? So at that time, that's when we're going to put out information to the entire membership and get them involved in a bigger call like this. So just know that we want those bigger, broader engagement strategies to happen. We want other members to be involved, but this group, this A team, is really our core group, and you guys are the ones making some decisions for the rest of the state. So just understand that. We are going to put out our scorecard every other year. We put that out on the schedule as the legislative session happens. We are about that close to putting out the next scorecard for the last 2-year session, so you'll be getting that information. Of course, we'll be doing sessions at conference. Pilar, John, Oscar, Cindy, Tara G. We've got a couple of number of folks who will be putting on some legislative advocacy type sessions at conference, so get involved in those. And then, of course, use each other. You know, if you don't understand something, that means somebody else probably doesn't understand something. So ask questions, start conversations. You can see that we already have some instant messaging conversations going on during this Zoom call. So if there's something that doesn't make sense to you, ask that question. Reach out to any one of us on the core team, A team as well, because we're the best tools, right? We just need to talk to one another.
One other thing, Stephanie, I was just thinking, does this group has not gotten the watch list that kind of wrapped up the last session? Is that correct?
That would be correct, yes.
So I'm thinking, can we get that to everybody? Yeah. This is actually the end of a session, so these are all things that are already done, all the legislation that's on it. But it will give you guys each a chance to take a look at what that looks like, what information is on there, and then the status and our position on it is also listed in one of the columns. So it just gives you a chance to take a look at it, familiarize yourself with it, so that you have at least kind of a general idea what it's about. And then if you have questions, feel free to give one of us an email or a call. We're happy to walk you through it if you need a little more information or you have some questions. Not a problem.
Right.
Cindy, you're still on. I thought you had work to do.
I'm working while I'm listening and working at the same time.
Okay. I don't want to be the one that messes up your vacation.
The multitasker.
Right.
Very good.
I'm working on my budget, so we'll see how that works out for me.
Right. We want to really open it up to questions. How do you guys feel about this? And how do you guys feel about sort of refreshing this process and engaging you in a different way? Do you like this idea?
One question, have any of you been on been the rep before for your district or section?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say that adding the responsibility of reading and being part of the discussion on whether or not we're watching, supporting, or opposing on a legislative idea is going to help us become more involved. Mm-hmm. And, as being on there before, we get the watch list, and I listened in on the calls and then basically just reported back to the rec section. But this will, I think, help with me being able to pass on more information and more in-depth information.
Good.
That's great. Thank you. And who's rec section? I don't have that list in front of me.
That was Brian.
This is Brian Cobb.
Okay. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian, because that's really what we were thinking too. What a great way to engage you guys in a different way, but also make sure that we had statewide representation. So now we've got somebody from every one of our districts, plus profession-wide expertise on here with all of our sections too. So now we know that having those discussions, we've got everybody's viewpoints included. Yeah. So.
And depending on the timing, the ideal situation would be that, Brian, you would get the information and then you'd be able to share it at your rec section conference call or board meeting that you had. and be able to get a consensus with all the colleagues that you have on that board. So it's not necessarily just falling on you as the person that's sitting on the A team to make that call about whether or not you think we should oppose or support or do any of those things, but really to get the buy-in from your boards as well, who are representing their members, so that really it's not just a sole group of people making these decisions in a vacuum. We're really talking to people that are in the profession and that it will affect once these legislative bills pass or don't. So it's good. I'm glad that.
Right. I think it will help it become more fluid with the information instead of just a one-way flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what we're hoping, and we're hoping too that you know, if any of you have questions or ideas, please bring them to us. We really want to make this interactive as well as useful, so that you get something out of it. Because unfortunately, I think that oftentimes the legislative rep was the person that was like, okay, who's not here today, right? That's how you get selected. We want this to be something that's a little more, hopefully a little more interesting and a little more important, and has some responsibility to do it.
Any other feedback or questions?
I can speak on behalf of myself from District 2. So this is my second year now doing this. I'm looking forward to the remodel of the advocacy team. To me, it keeps me more engaged during the year. So I'm definitely excited for it and reporting back to D2.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, and
I have a general question for everybody that's currently on the call, and maybe Stephanie and Pilar, we can send an email out to those who are not. And you don't have to answer now, just so you have your anonymity. But like I said, when I started this process, and I would still say I don't know much about legislation, but if there's anybody that wants to get together and have a side conference call that's not part of our official A-team business and relearn what we learned our senior year of high school about how legislation, the basics work, like how is a bill presented and what process does it go through and at what point do we get involved and what does it even mean to have an advocate? Like, what are you, Doug, and how did you get into that position and why do people do that? I mean, those are things that to me made no sense. I didn't care about government when I was a senior in high school, and so I didn't pay attention in that class. But it is really the core foundation of how all this stuff starts and how we even have a watch list. So if anybody's interested, email Stephanie or Pilar and let them know, and we can put together a call for people who want to go back to the basics. And I'm happy to be on that call, and hopefully Doug would be interested in helping. Doug, I'm volunteering you for that if you're interested.
Yeah. Cindy, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so piggybacking off your comments, and excellent comments, by the way, because I was going to bring that up. I mean, it's good that everybody wants to look at legislation and respond to legislation. I think generally you're going to understand how it impacts your individual agencies, but without having full context of, you know, where the legislation was derived from, what is the process that a piece of legislation needs to go through in order to become law. I think that those are just like foundational questions. And I was going to offer up, you know, I'd be happy to have a sit down with folks during conference time. If anybody can find 45 minutes or an hour so we can just go over government 101. I mean, volunteering myself for that if need be.
I think that would be great.
Yeah. Can we watch I'm Just a Bill?
So I lead in on myself.
Good.
I think that's really true, because when I first started, I agree, Cindy, I was sort of the same way, like I said, almost 20 years ago. And I mean, I was completely lost about all of it. And so that would be really helpful. And please let us know if you're interested in that, and we'll put something together.
Definitely. Anything else from the rest of the group?
Or from the leaders.
Or from the leaders, yes.
Well, I can tell you, this is Oscar here in Bell Gardens. I can tell you I'm excited to be part of this. And yeah, Pilar, it was about a year ago that I first contacted Janet, who referred me to you. And, you know, you had been a long time friend of Bell Gardens here for some time when Pam was there. But just anytime I would see you specifically, Pilar, I would think, man, that's a knowledgeable person that at some point I need to connect with to make myself a better professional. And again, piggybacking off of what Cindy was stating about not having the full knowledge of how this all works, same thing. I'd love to get to know how it all works, and I think the best way is just to jump in and not be afraid of what you don't know yet. Be excited about what you will know.
Great.
Doug won't let us go too far off the rails.
One thing that if there are no other questions, John Jones, if I could get you to maybe do a quick recap of one of the things that's coming up that we would love to have assistance with, and that is at conference.
Oh, all right. So, hello, team. Thank you from our perspective for stepping up and being engaged. I know I didn't comment on that last topic, but the bottom line is I've been in the industry a few years. Thank you, Pilar, for noting that earlier. And
I'm the one that's retired.
And I really wish I would have gotten involved in legislation, well over 20 years ago, because the bottom line to legislation is, yes, it might be very confusing. It doesn't make much sense, but Doug does a great job of trying to break it down for us and weigh the pros and cons so we can make some form of an educated decision. But most importantly, it affects all of us. And these educators are pretty sly. They will do things that we don't know and won't see to get things accomplished because they have a large lobbyist group pushing them a different direction. So we've got the assembly team and the senators kind of walking in path with us because we're a big animal in their voting block. So they need us. And it's important for us to be educated enough to be able to make the best decision for our membership. So this is really about not just us, but it's about the profession. So keep that in mind as you move into this new and exciting field. In terms of the conference that's upcoming, we got a core team, Cindy, Oscar, myself, Laura and Steph are stepping in here and there. But it's really about trying to launch the A-team at the conference. And you all know, if you're familiar with where our spot is in the vendors hall, we're mixed in with all the other sections, and Steph has got some really neat ideas on how that's going to all connect. But Cindy and Oscar and I and Laura and Steph are trying to plot out how can we best attract, our membership that are attending the conference to actually want to engage. And so we're thinking of different ideas, coming up with some little thematic concepts, the A-team, using the background music maybe as some ideas to draw people because it's a very catchy tune. And then just looking at different ideas to do that. So we're going to engage all of you simply because we will have a space that is going to identify, what is the A-team, what is advocacy about, and talk about Prop 68, because that's the most recent thing out there. In our Pilar and I did a real quick seminar last week on at the Region 5 mini workshop, and really people packed that room, not so much about the advocacy piece, that was kind of a secondary benefit, but it was really about Prop 68. They're really anxious to try to find out how they can get their hands on money. So, we might see that as our hook to get people, but we're going to need all of your investment to spend half an hour of your time to sign up at our area to kind of put your face out there as your ledge rep, as you might say, 18 rep within your district, so that you can help talk about the advocacy team and Prop 68. We won't leave you hanging. You'll have information, but just as a forewarning, we will be emailing you, asking you to serve in our booth time, as you might say, throughout the vending time. So just an FYI.
There could be a gold chain in your future.
There could be.
Could be.
Get some beautiful bling.
Yeah, right. Oh. All right.
So, if there are no more questions, one more call out there? Okay, then we do have a call scheduled for this coming month in February. It's all our calls are generally, well, they are the second Monday of each month. We do know that that is a holiday for some, but because the following week is a bigger holiday for most, the next Monday, we don't want to let it go, and we really are we're going to go ahead and we're going to hold the call Monday, the 11th of January. I mean, February. That's already passed. The 11th of February at 2 o'clock. You will receive an email prior to that, the week prior, with an agenda and the watch list, so you can take a look at that. But we'll get the previous watch list out to you before that, so that you can have a chance to kind of look it over and get a little bit more familiar with what that is. Those are usually the two things that come out the week before the meeting. The call is at 2 o'clock and usually lasts about an hour. We've been really trying to stick to that 1 hour so that we don't take up too much of your time, but at the same time that we make it productive time. Anything else on that, Stephanie or Doug?
Just a reminder that we won't hold a conference call in March because we will be all together at conference during the sessions. And then we'll resume our schedule on April 8th. So mark those on your calendar.
Yep, second Monday of each month at 2 o'clock.
Right. There are a few months in there that we might postpone, or if the legislature is in recess, we might postpone, depending on what kind of work Doug has for us. So,
yeah, summers are usually slow, and election seasons can be a little slow. So we'll let you know if that schedule changes.
Great.
Any other comments from the leadership?
Nada.
No, no.
All right.
Okay. And any last questions? Okay, well, thank you all for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we will be talking to you in a few weeks.
Yay. Thanks, everybody. We look forward to working with you guys.
Yep, welcome aboard.
All right.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stephanie,
Yeah.
is this the agenda for the meeting? Is this, because I don't know if you'd sent this to us.
We did not send out the agenda today. It was just Pilar and I's kind of notes of what we wanted to talk about, but we'll definitely send you an agenda in the future.
All right, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, you guys.
All
Bye-bye.
right, well, thank you. Oh, now it's time to rock out, huh? I got to get me a camera.
Go team.
Bye-bye.
Woohoo!
Bye.